Broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network. The bandwidth for this episode of Gun Guy Radio is sponsored by Patriot Patch Company. PatriotPatch.co.
Welcome to episode 227 of Gun Guy Radio. This is a podcast that shines a positive light on the firearms lifestyle. I'm your host, Chick Challen, with co-host Zach Carlson. This is your weekly dose of positive firearms talk without the politics. Hey, Zach.
Hey, how's it going? I think we're back to guns this week. No virtual guns.
Oh, all the hate mail we got. Xbox is the devil. That's the problem with this generation.
We're not, I was unfortunately, we were lumped into millennials. I was just telling my sister-in-law, who is a true blue millennial, she's probably born in 94 or something like that. And I told her, we used to not be considered millennials. We were considered Gen Y, right? Or Gen Z, maybe? I don't know. It wasn't millennials. And I looked recently when I was making fun of millennials, and I realized they moved it to 81, and we are now considered millennials.
Right. Because... What, I was born in 83 and you were born in 82?
Correct.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
So I'm going to just be offended now, I think.
I'm moving back into my parents' basement. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Socialism's great.
I mean, you can be on your parents' insurance until you're like 50 now, I think. So
Yeah, Bernie Sanders did it, right? Anyways, what did you do in guns?
Not much. Found out that steel cabinet I bought for the for my gun safe, my gun cabinet, my everything cabinet. It's going to be giant. It's going to be like 1% of what I own, or what I own. It takes up 1% of it probably, but we'll see. But it's Amazon sent me an email, said sorry. We're basically, they sent me the emoji of the guy with his hands up, like it's delayed.
I thought you got a phone call from the trucking company, though.
I did, but they don't have it yet.
Oh, so it's not the trucking's fault. It's Amazon getting it onto said truck?
Well, I think it's drop shipped from Global or from the manufacturer. No, the manufacturer, whatever.
Durham or whatever.
Durham, yeah.
Durham, something like that.
Something like that. So we'll see how that plays out. But in other news, Amazon sent me 2 TVs when I ordered one, so bonus.
Wait, you ordered a TV?
Yeah, I ordered a TV for the kids, like, video gaming area, and they sent 2.
Oh, so you have a new gaming TV too?
I guess so. I mean, I'm going to call or email Amazon and say, what's up? Well, it's kind of obvious what happened because the UPS guy went to scan it, and they both had the same label, the same tracking number.
That's funny.
So I'm like, And, they did that one other time years ago with like a sound compressor or something I had for podcasting, and they sent 2, and I contacted the tech support, and they ended up, instead of like telling me how to return it, they issued me a refund for the one. So then
So you got 2 free.
I'm like, wait, what? Like, you guys, how do you even make money running a business like this?
Yeah, a guy at work started buying Costco closeouts. You could buy all the returns that Costco has, and it's like an eBay store, or like an eBay for those returns.
Sure.
And he had like brand new stuff in the box, and I was like, well, why don't you just buy a new one and then take this one back and get full credit for it? Like, because some were broken inside of there. And I was like, just take the broken one back. And see, that's the equivalent right there. But okay, well, that's good. So I think that steel cabinet might be made on demand. I would not doubt if they didn't actually stock it, if they just kind of built it in a short order.
Possibly. I don't know. I'll keep you updated. Other than that, I saw my Dream AR go on sale at Brownell's, one of the retro ARs.
Which one was it?
The plain Jane, like original one.
It's 20-inch barrel one, though, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
So that went on sale for like $7.99.
$7.99, right? Yep,
yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah, pretty dang good deal considering what they normally go for. And
That's
this
like half of a cabinet. Why didn't you get that?
I know. I just did way too much Black Friday on other stuff, and I just can't justify it. Maybe next year. I bet they do it again next year. I can probably pull the trigger on it then.
It's not exactly a practical gun per se.
Yeah, I'm like, why do I want this? I'm like, I mean, it's really cool, but like, I'm like, I don't know. There's probably other guns I should buy first, realistically.
I think we talked about this in the AR episode, the 223 episode, but I've had a couple of those 20-inch carry handle front sight post guns, hand guards and everything, and they're really cool. I really like that gun.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really neat. I've ended up selling all of them because they're not practical to me. Like, I shoot them every so often, but when you go to the range, it's not the first one I grab.
Well, I think it's because we're children of the 80s, and that was the gun back in the movies, growing up. And I think that's a big part of it.
True. And actually, it's funny you say the Dream AR was a Brownell's retro gun, because I also saw the 16-inch version that was an XM1, whatever. I'll put a link in the show notes, but their 16-inch like Commando with the fake suppressor or fake flash hider, the long flash hider. It's like a 12.5-inch barrel with a long flash hider pin and welded. And I thought, because I'm on the hunt to make a machine gun now that I'm on the SOT.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm looking I want the Heat gun. You've seen the movie Heat.
Yeah.
You've seen the carry handle A1
Oh, yeah.
AR-15 with that's like an 11.5-inch barrel. And Luth, that Luth AR company? It's like they make a weird, funky, adjustable stock, but they're making like A1 retro parts now. So I can get a complete A1 carry handle, upper receiver, and they even do it in that kind of gray anodizing instead of black.
Yeah.
And I can build one from parts, but I thought this gun is perfect. It's already built. I can just cut the pin and welded flash hider off of it, machine it for the trigger pack, and register it as the machine gun, and bam, I'm in business. Until I looked at the barrel twist rate. It's a 1 in 12 barrel twist.
Oh.
And I don't want that. So I was like, crap. So Troy makes one very similar, but it's 1 in 7 or 1 in 9. Or I can go the Luth AR way and just build it from parts with a good barrel and all that, and just build it up, and then I can make it whatever specs I want. So I'm still playing with those ideas.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
But $7.99, I thought, well, that's not bad.
Yeah. Anyways,
So,
what did you talk about? What you did?
I bought some goodies that we're going to talk about in the main topic from a company called MK Machining. They make these. I think they got their fame from 3D printed scope levers, throw levers, and all that kind of stuff. And I basically outfitted my 3 main scopes with these products, and we'll talk about them a little bit when we get down to our main topic. But I thought that was kind of cool, and they make some other stuff. They actually make a adapter mount for the magneto speed, however you pronounce it, chronograph that I have that you normally have to mount to your barrel. They make a mount that makes it go back to the rifle itself, so it takes the harmonics issue out of it, so you should be able to shoot groups and get velocity readings at the same time. So now I'm going to kind of look into that for one of my next purchases.
Cool. Well, Patriot Patch Company helps make this episode possible. Check out the Patriot Patch of the Month Club. Currently have the Santa patch, the December 2019 patch, unique patch every month. Only time it's ran is that month. We don't run that patch again. So that
one's in the mail, right?
That one's in the mail. Yeah, we still have a couple slots open for new subscribers, so check it out, patriotpatch.co. Also have a bunch of Christmas designs, and here's a spoiler alert: we have some Christmas ornaments that are some of our past festive patch designs. Going to be launching next week as well. So PVC ornaments. So just like the patches, they're actually a little bit thicker, but they come with the string on it, so you can hang it on your tree. It's pretty cool.
Well, that's cool.
Main topic, a brief look at scopes. All right, so Zach wanted to talk about scopes this week, so I said, sure, why not? I have
no other ideas, so let's go with yours. I would counter you with a better idea, but I have none at the moment, is what you said, I think, or what you're at least thinking. Well, I mean, scopes is such a quagmire of a topic, but I just want to talk about, I've had a lot of recent experience with scopes because I've been buying some and changing stuff, like I was saying with the MK stuff. So I figured it'd be a good time while this information is fresh in my head to blurt it out on this podcast.
No, you buying stuff and changing stuff?
I think that was a dig. Was that a dig?
See, that's why I don't have to shoot ever, because you do all this stuff for me,
Oh, okay. All right. I got it. But I think the biggest question you need to ask yourself when you're actually going to buy a scope is, what do you really need? I think it's so easy with guns in general and or scopes is to either underbuy or overbuy. I mean, it's so tempting to run down to your local Walmart and buy the $30 scope that's in a blister pack on the pegs. But are you going to be really happy with that scope, or are you going to be wishing you spent more? And it's also very easy to spend thousands of dollars on a scope when you're not needing the power and capabilities of said scope. I fell in that same exact trap when I moved out here to Idaho, and the lure of long-range shooting and hunting got me, and I spent whatever a Night Force NXS 5-25 cost at the time, which I think was like $2,600, something like that.
Wow.
On the scope. And you know what really upset me about that is before I moved, I built that 308 Remington 700, and it had a Bushnell quote-unquote elite tactical 5-15 scope on it. And I was perfectly content with that scope. And I think we shot it out to like 500 yards or something at your dad's farm.
Yeah.
And it was totally fine. And I thought that with that scope being let's say it was $500, I think at the time, something like that. I assumed that a $2,600 scope would give me 5 times the clarity, or 5x, whatever criteria you want to call it. And it wasn't. I was actually pretty disappointed in like how unclear the scope was. I mean, I was expecting clarity and quality that I just didn't get. Now, Night Force are very nice scopes. I am not knocking them. They are built like tanks, and they are very good. I think I just had not realistic expectations of what I was going to get for my money. And it was one of those purchases that I had seen on the internet. I researched my heart out, but I never really put my eyes behind them in any meaningful way. My coworkers had a couple of them, and I just, looked at them, but I didn't really know what I was getting into. So you really got to ask yourself, what do you really need? And be honest with yourself, and be honest with what your budget is. Like you can't have champagne tastes on a beer budget a lot of times with scopes. So a lot of this work is you get what you pay for on optics. And you've heard that adage of you should spend at least as much or maybe more on optics as compared to the gun. You heard that?
Right. Yeah.
I think that's pretty close to being true. Like, you can make up for a lot with a good set of optics, but if you can't see what you're hitting at or shooting at, it's not going to be as fun. I always look at it like with cars. Like, I pick a car that has a nice interior. I don't really care what the exterior is like so much, because I never see the exterior other than just getting in and out of it. But I live in the interior of the car. Same thing with the scope. You look through the scope every time you fire the gun, and it could be great in every other way, but if the scope is crappy, it's going to be a degraded experience. So the biggest thing these days, back in those days, it was pretty much second focal plane scopes more than anything. And nowadays, first focal plane or front focal plane is very popular, and it's essentially the difference is, in layman's terms, is where the reticle is in regards to the lenses or the internal workings. And what effectively it means to you is on a first focal plane scope, when you change the zoom ring on it to go from different powers of the settings, the reticle appears to change size to your eye. But what the benefit of that is if you have a milling reticle or any kind of reticle that you measure distance with, like a mil dot or any kind of these fancy reticles in almost most scopes these days, is that formula that you're using is applicable to every zoom level that you're at. Now, with a second focal plane scope, is where most people are used to, is when you zoom up the power, the reticle stays fixed in your view, and just the image behind it, what you're looking at, changes. The problem there is if you have a mil dot reticle on a 3-9 or 5-15, a lot of times it'll only be applicable and right and calibrated at a certain zoom level. Usually it's the highest zoom, but that's not always the case. But typically, if it's a 3-15, the mil dot will be accurate at 15 power. And it has a few other little oddities, but that's the main goal or main difference. And I think it depends on what you're doing. If you're just making a hunting rifle or anything, second focal plane typically is fine. If you're just like, you had a 1022 that you were showing me there a minute ago, that's a second focal plane. It's not like you're going to be zooming from a lot of distances and you're not milling in the reticle. You're not judging distance and size and all that stuff. Second focal plane is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Just a lot of people want for speed and everything the first focal plane. So that's what most of my scopes are these days, except for my rimfire scopes. And then along with that, exposed turrets versus capped turrets. Your scope there had capped turrets, which just means the little turret for windage and elevation is either exposed, like on a quote-unquote tactical scope that you're going to dial in. You're going to use a rangefinder. You're going to laze your target to find out exactly how far it is. You're going to enter that in a ballistics table or computer and figure out what your drop is going to be, and then you would dial that compensation into the scope. That works. I have a lot of scopes that way. But in a hunting situation, like when you're going to go try to shoot a possum in the face in your barn, you may bump that turret, or you might accidentally be off a full revolution from the last time you dialed. And there's a lot of little gotchas there. But so the cap turrets are traditionally found on a lot of scopes and a lot of hunting scopes too, because if you're carrying it through the woods or carrying it in the mountains, there's a good chance that you can accidentally have bumped that exposed turret. And if you're taking an actual animal shot, you definitely don't want to miss because you were off a full revolution at all. So those cap turrets are a lot. And that's where when hunting, the Kentucky windage, you've heard of Kentucky windage. I don't know why they call it Kentucky windage. I don't know. They don't do Kentucky elevation either. I mean, they don't, I don't know if it only applies to windage, but it's basically the idea of holding over, which means like if your reticle is just a standard reticle and you know that, or a compensating reticle, that you literally lift the gun and bring the target in a different spot on the lines of the scope reticle to fire, or even holding off in the no man's land because you have to go up and over, and you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. You're not actually using the crosshair of the reticle.
Right. It probably goes back to the old Kentucky rifles. You had to hold out and over depending on the wind and the distance, and your target or your sights were never actually on the target.
Yeah, exactly. And those were not even optic guns, right? Those are iron sights.
Right.
Yeah. So, and these days it's very easy to find scopes that actually have bullet drop compensating reticles. You can buy them with calibrations for certain loads. Like you'll see a lot of 5.56 or 308 bullet drop compensating, where you zero it at a certain yardage on the main crosshair, and then there is already predefined yardages in the reticle. My ACOGs are that way. ACOGs are meant for 223 or 5.56, and you zero at 100, and it goes all the way out to 600 or 800 on the hash marks. That's really good and fast, but it really locks you in. What if you use a different ammo or a different barrel length or different velocity than they intended? Now those things don't correspond exactly how they are intended. So that has the pros and cons there as well.
Or what if you use a $50 eBay ACOG? Does that make a difference?
Yeah. And speaking of that, dialing makes a difference on the quality of the scope. So dialing references using one aim point in the reticle, but just compensating by dialing the turrets to get that compensation. But that only works if you're confident that that scope is high enough quality that each click represents what it's supposed to represent in movement. And that's where you hear the term a box test. That is literally shooting a target, moving one turret a predetermined, like a few inches to one direction, shooting another group, and then moving down, shooting another group, moving back left, shooting a group, and then moving back where your original shot was, and then shooting again. And you should see a traditional box pattern in your groups. And if you are moving over or under in different dimensions than what you think you dialed, then your scope does not track well, and you can't really trust it then, because it's shooting 1,000 yards and you have to move up, 13 mils on it or something like that. If you don't believe you're getting true 13 mils, you're never going to hit what you're aiming at, and it'll just be super frustrating. So you really got to have a good enough scope if you're going to just dial it. And I like the scope on you have at 1022. We used to always do this too, where you would dial it up and then you would tap the scope with your hand or something to try to get all the adjustments in there to move properly, because you didn't trust that you were actually getting the movements, and then you have to shoot a bunch to make sure it actually is where you're at. So it was a guess and check method, and that just doesn't work when you're dialing it in, because you have to be able to click it exactly how many as you want and have confidence that you're going to get that downrange. So that's kind of the difference there. That's where I think a reticle that has multiple aim points in it already is pretty dead simple. Not even the ones that are bullet drop compensating specifically for loads, but just have a milling reticle are really great. They're typically called Christmas tree reticles, which means it is in the shape of a Christmas tree. So as the further you have to hold up for elevation, it has much more wider windage corrections as well. Because if you have to hold that much high, you're probably shooting further, and further you go, the more the wind is effective. So it looks like a Christmas tree, but those work really good.
How festive!
Yeah, and you get lit. You can even get lit Christmas tree reticles. I don't know. Are you a white lit or a multicolored lit?
Multicolored, rainbow.
Of course. And then, so you're with me so far, right? We didn't lose anybody.
We're good. Keep going.
Okay. And then you hear a lot of people referencing 1-inch versus 30 millimeter. And even these days, there's 34 and 35 millimeter becoming commonplace. And what that is referring to is the main tube diameter. That's the main body of the tube, not the end lenses, just the main body where the turrets are at. The 1-inch was the kind of standard for a very, very long time. I think that's what you had on that rifle you just showed me a minute ago.
Yeah.
They're nice and compact. That's the nice thing about them. They're small, svelte, easy. And then 30 millimeter kind of became pretty popular. 30 millimeter is larger than 1-inch. And then what that typically does, it's not an always thing, but it typically gives you more room for the erector assembly inside there to have more adjustments. So like on your tactical scopes that you are going to dial the reticle or dial the turrets, you need as much as you can get a lot of times. So it has room for that screw assembly. You're turning it and it's literally moving the reticle inside that body. So a 1-inch tube versus a 30 millimeter tube, obviously if you have a 30 millimeter tube, there theoretically is more room for that whole assembly to move up and down and left and right. So, and I guess some people make the argument there's more light transmission coming through that tube. I guess that depends on so many other variables. I won't even really touch that, but then 30 millimeter kind of became the standard for tactical scopes and a lot of actually hunting scopes. And then companies started coming out with 34 and 35 millimeter tubes. And those things look pretty big. The only downside, I think, is then you're kind of limited more on your ring selection because you have to have the rings that match the tube size of your scope. But and I think if 30 was good, then 34, 35 is even better, right? So I think it's the same principles, just going on a bigger scale. The only ones I even have experience with are the Burris XTRs, and I think they're 34 millimeter. But you see some Leupold 35 millimeters these days. I think they're the only ones doing 35, but I could totally be wrong on that. So you put all those things together, and it kind of narrows down a lot of your choices. So you kind of decide based on these criteria, it'll eliminate a lot of scopes out of your choices. So if you just go to Vortex's website and you start looking at them, you'll see a lot of these features come with higher price points. And I actually did an article for Athlon last year that said, what do you get for the money when you start buying higher end scopes? And it showed the difference between their cheaper lines all the way up through their more expensive lines. And there is a difference, but it doesn't mean you need the top shelf one for your application. Some of the scope accessories that I like, because it's always about accessories, right? So, like I was talking about with the MK machining stuff, throw levers are really nice. When you have a zoom scope, a lot of them are just knurled rings by your eyepiece. And if you want to be able to quickly zoom in or zoom out, because it's always where you don't want it. Of course, it's never where you really want it to be on zoom range. So let's say if you're hunting, if you're zoomed in too much, you'll never find that animal quickly because you'll be searching, and so if you zoom out, you may not get the placement you want. So there's a lot of things there. So throw levers simply clamp around that ring and provide a stub basically for you to grab and turn. And that's one of the things I got from MK Machining was their 3D printed scope levers, throw levers. And you think 3D printed would be just crap, but man, these things are, I don't know if the 3D printers have gotten so much better since I last looked at it, or they've got some sort of technique, but it looks really nice. The plastic has got like a kind of matte finish. You don't see all the layers in these as much as the old ones. So I don't foresee any issues. It's not like it's a huge high torque item anyways, but
yeah.
And they're fairly inexpensive. They've got them for a ton of different models of scopes. So if you have any name brand scope, you'll probably be able to find a throw lever for it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It makes it real easy for them to serve like the entire optic market for a neat little accessory like that.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of times they'll say like, oh, if you have a scope that you want or that we want, if you send the scope to them, they'll build it for it, and then they can offer it to everybody else after the fact, you know?
Cool.
Because once the program's done, they're done. Flip-up caps, I like flip-up caps. I saw your rifle had them. Almost every scope comes with like the bikini covers, you know, the little elastic cord with the plastic cups on each end. They're okay, but like, okay, if you're carrying it around and then you need to take a shot, you take it off, and then what do you got to just sit there and hold it while you're shooting, or
right.
You know, it's kind of a pain in the butt. And when they're sitting in your safe or sitting in your storage area, they're just like dust magnets. You know, the dust is going to fall right in this tube that has a big lip around it that will not let dust just fall out of it. It just collects it. So I always like them. I've always used the Butler Creek ones. I'm sure there's other brand ones that are out there, but the Butler Creek ones, the only thing that kind of is annoying with the Butler Creek ones is sizing them. So there's a sizing chart on their website, and you have to measure the eyepieces and the objective end and then find the cup that is, you know, in that range. Last time I bought them, I just used the manufacturer's website that had the little diagram on it for each size, and it was fine. But so, yeah, flip-up caps are fun. Scope levels. Now, on that 1022 you probably don't even need a scope level. If your gun is canted while you're shooting it, it's not going to be off that much. But the further you go and the further height, if your scope is further away from your bore line, the more effective or more drastic the effect is going to be known. But it's just like anything. If you're looking through something on top of the rifle and the bullet's coming down below you, if you're sighted in and it's perfectly plumb to each other, if the gun is canted one way or another, those distances change and it could affect your accuracy or your point of aim and point of impact. So scope levels, there's a lot of different ones out there. I find personally, the cheaper the scope level, the less I will trust it. And this is not a snobby thing, but I've ordered like Burris ones and I had them shipped to me and they showed up and there was not even liquid in the bubble levels. Like, oh, okay, like this isn't ridiculous, but I kind of like the ones that mount on the rail better. So they make them rail mounted, or they make them where you clamp them right on the scope tube. And they both have their pluses and minuses. Actually, with that Night Force scope that I talked about, I had one that was in a Night Force base. It was a one-piece base, and then the cap that went on the top of the ring of the scope cap had an angle indicator and a bubble level all built into it. That was really nice, but it was really specific to that mount, so I can't find it for every single scope. But the scope levels, they're good. I try to keep them further away. And then they usually point left, and that way you can use if you're right-handed, you would use your left eye to just quickly check it right before you're about to take a shot. So you're looking down the scope with your right eye, pop open your left eye, look up, just make sure the bubble level's right, and then you could take your shot. When I did the downside I find to them is they're kind of a pain in the butt to install. Because it seems like I'm going to put a video up this weekend. I did it while I put this MK machining stuff on. Is you level your scope cap, right? You put a level across the top turret and you have everything level. You have the scope level leveled, but then as you tighten that one screw, it always shifts slightly right when it's about tensioned. So you have to basically overcompensate and then screw it so it draws it back into levelness. And it is a very guess and check method that I don't seem to have the patience for. And if anybody has a better idea how to put a scope level on, I am all ears because I've got 2 more to put on. I bought 3 of them total, and I could definitely use the help on that. But that's the best way I found to do it, but I'm not saying I'm the expert there. And then the other thing I got from MK Machining was a focus wheel. And a focus wheel, a lot of these higher end scopes have a side focus knob. So that means the parallax is set for the distance you're shooting, which means your reticle and your target will be in focus. And they're usually a higher tension knob, so they're not the easiest things to just quickly change. Well, MK Machining makes a 3D printed scope focus wheel, and it's the same concept as the throw lever, except for it's more like a cookie cutter wheel. So it has little finger indents and you just turn it and it gives you more leverage on adjusting it. It works good. Now that one did not have the same print quality as the throw lever. This one, you do see the layers of the 3D print. I don't think you need a ton of strength for a focus wheel because there's not a lot of torque on it, but there is that. And then actually on one of my scopes, there was very little room between the printed yardage marks on the turret and the end of the turret. So the 3D, the focus wheel kind of had to stick off the scope a little bit. So I wasn't super thrilled with that. I wish they would have printed it a little bit thinner, but it is what it is. The stuff's inexpensive, all said and in, but they're good accessories for a scope. Yeah, I think that covers most everything. Everything good for you on that?
Absolutely. No, I'm just checking out the MK Machining website. They got a lot of cool little products.
Yeah, they've got, I would hate to be a dealer for MK Machining because there's just so many SKUs that you'd have to stock. Right. I'm glad they're direct to consumer because I think most of their stuff. Brownells does carry a lot of their stuff. I know Brownells did not carry their focus wheels though, so I think that's a newer product for them.
Cool. So let's talk about what some of your current setups look like.
Yeah, I've had a ton of scopes over the years, obviously, as with just about anything gun related, but I think I've got a pretty good setup right now. Like I am pretty happy with almost all my scopes. I don't feel the need to change a bunch of them. The one that I use a lot for testing for any kind of rifle that comes in is this Athlon Optics Midas TAC, and it's a 6-24 power. They just released the 2020 lineup, and they actually did come out with a 5-25 power, so whatever kind of floats your boat there. But it's basically a 30 millimeter tube, exposed turrets. The clicks feel great. A milling reticle, Christmas tree reticle. It's been accurate, been first focal plane. It's really, really nice. I really like it. It's a little bit heavy, but all these tactical scopes are heavy. There's very few that are super light. There are some, but you're going to pay for it. And this is pretty affordable optic. Are you looking at it right now? Do you know how much it is? I think it's, I don't want to say, I think it was 800 maybe.
849.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a lot to a lot of people, and I totally get it. Like Brownells has their 4-16 power for $589, and then the 6-24 that I have is like $650, $629 to $669. There's two different versions of their milling reticle, so I have the APR S3, but whatever, that doesn't matter as much. But it's a nice quality scope. I like it. I never really gave Athlon. They always felt like the cheap Chinese knockoff to me, except when I really got into it and I realized that it's kind of like Hyundai when we were kids. Do you remember Hyundai cars when we were in the early 90s?
Yeah,
they were just terrible. They were terrible. But today they're pretty darn nice. Yeah. And I think that's the same kind of progression. Some of these imported optics are doing that same quality arc. So the Athlon Optics Midas TAC, it's been a really good scope so far. I keep it on a set of rings, and I just transfer it rifle to rifle. It has no rifle home right now because I need this scope to test mechanical accuracy of rifles that I come in. And then I've had a lot of Vortex optics. Vortex is famous for their kind of no BS lifetime warranty. People love that, I guess. But they basically make optics that run the gamut from the cheapest, like packaged with a rifle type optic, all the way up to $3,500 for a scope. You know, they really do. So that's why it's hard when somebody says, "Oh, I hate Vortex," or "I love Vortex." It's like, well, which one? Like, there's so many different versions that it becomes really important what one they've had experience with. So the two that I have currently are the Diamondback Tactical First Focal Plane. That's also a 6-24. And this one, I actually got, this was kind of a cool one. I got this before it was released. They sent this to me because I had an article coming out that would have gone to print after they actually announced it. But this one, they have it in 4-16 and 6-24. It is a, like I said, first focal plane, exposed turrets, 30 millimeter tube, a Christmas tree reticle, and it's at Brownells right now for $369. I think it's an absolute no-brainer at that price. It is ridiculously inexpensive. The glass is good, not excellent, but really good. I mean, for $370, I think that's incredible. I just think it's a really, really good price. And it's a very good scope. I've got that on an AR-15 right now, but I used it on my, I think we talked about it before, that Ruger American in 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah.
I built that gun up and I shot that 1,000 yards that's as far as I can go out here at the established range. And it did fine. I mean, I could see my target. It was everything I needed it to be. I can't complain. For $370, I think it's a no-brainer. Really, really good. And then on the little bit higher end is the Vortex Optics Viper PST Gen 2. That is a 5 to 25. They also offer that in like 2 to 10 and 3 to 15 and some other ones, and 1 to 6, I think, actually, too. But that one is like a $900 optic. So is this one over 2 times as good as the Diamondback? I don't think so. It has a few better features. I will give it that. It is a better scope. But you really got to ask yourself, is it double the cost better for you? And it may not be. The 2 main differences there is the optical clarity is a little bit better in the PST by far, and it has a zero stop. And we didn't cover zero stops, but zero stops are essentially a mechanical stop on the turret. So you sight your gun in, and you put this mechanical stop on it, so that way when you dial up to go for further distances, when you dial back down, it'll hit a stop, so you don't accidentally go over and be off. And it is a nice feature. The Midas TAC had it. The PST Gen 2 has it. The Diamondback does not. When I shot the 6.5 Creedmoor, it didn't matter because I couldn't go a full revolution more down. So it was kind of like a coincidental zero stop for me. So it worked out in my case. Depending on your caliber and your gun and all that, you may not be as lucky. So it could be kind of annoying that it doesn't have a zero stop. But I didn't find that to be a problem in my particular situation. This one's kind of cheating. The next one is a Trijicon ACOG. We were talking about ACOGs. I've had a lot of ACOGs over the years because the ACOGs are the scopes that I buy, I love, and then the grass is greener syndrome hits me, and I sell it to fund another purchase, and then I realize, the grass was actually spray painted AstroTurf, and then I come back to the ACOG. So I have bought and sold probably 4 or 5 ACOGs. And these are not cheap. These are what, $1,000, something like that. Let me see.
$1,200. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. $1,200. It depends on the model, I guess. But this one I have now, I finally decided, okay, I'm not gonna quit you, baby. So I bought the ACOG LED version. So you're familiar with the ACOGs? They have the fiber optic stripe over the top. That's like their distinguishing feature a lot of times. Well, a lot of times in bright daylight, that would gather so much light that reticle would be like pulsing in your view. So a lot of guys would put a little piece of black tape over it and dim it down a little bit, and then eventually that tritium will go out. So what I did this time is I bought an LED powered one. So it's got a battery in it. So it still has an etched reticle. So even if the battery's dead, it still will work. It just won't be lit. But then it has an LED lit reticle with a battery, and then you can change the intensity by hand with a knob. It's the same optical clarity and everything. That's the nice thing about these ACOGs is I think the glass is fantastic. I mean, it looks beautiful. I mean, they're just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. They are set for bullet drop compensation. So you set it for typically 100 yards, and there's hash marks that go out to, I think, 600 on mine. It's really good. I've never shot it out to 600, quite honestly, so I don't know if they're even accurate, but it's there. If you had to shoot a man-sized target, which is what these are kind of intended for, because these are military optics, I think it would probably be fine. But like if you're trying to get target shooting at that, it's still only a 4-power scope, so it's a very low magnification. So they make them from like 3.5 power all the way up to, well, actually they make them to like 1.5 power, but low power to like 5 or 6 power, I think, is the higher ones. But I've always used the 4 power and the 3.5 power ones, and I've never had an issue. They're beautiful. They're a little expensive. $1,200 is a lot of money, but these are like bulletproof, quote unquote, combat grade optics. I mean, they're awesome, 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 awesome. But you're going to pay for that, and you don't get a whole lot of magnification. And they're really meant for they really look right on ARs because the height of them and the eye relief needed for them, which is not great on these. You have to get your eye pretty close. It's really kind of suited for an AR. I've tried to put them on other guns, and they look awkward and they don't fit right. I'm sure there's some other guns they fit, but whatever. The latest ones that I actually just wrote an article. I need to put a link I'll put a link in the show notes. I just put an article up on Range Hot today, literally, of mounting an optic on a Tika, which is my camo painted gun that we talked about in episodes past. I put a new scope on it, so I used an adapter and a rail adapter, and I mounted a Leupold VX Freedom. How do you say Leupold? Is it Leopold or Leupold?
Leopold? Leupold?
Leopold?
Depends on how I'm feeling.
Yeah, I guess I've heard it way more than one way, I guess, but whatever. Leopold. Their VX Freedom line. The VX Freedom line is a newer line that they came out with. It was meant to go between, I think, their VX1 and VX3 lines. It kind of rolled up some features into one. And the rimfire specific one is what I did because these are going on 22s. It just basically has a fixed parallax at 60 yards, I believe. So it's kind of a good compromise for most things. 3 to 9 power. It's very light. I think it's like 11 or 12 ounces. I tested the gun with a Midas tack on it, and then I put the Leopold on it, and it feels like a toy gun now. I mean, it's light enough that you can carry, but it's good enough quality. It's 3 to 9 power is plenty good for what I'm doing with that gun. It's got capped turrets, but if you take the turret caps off, it does have big enough knobs underneath there that you could hand turn them if you needed to. Whereas like a lot of the guns have like a coin slot where you have to use a little tool of some sort to do the clicks. So it's kind of a hybrid there. But more importantly, it has a MOA based reticle. So there's your 0 point or your aiming point, and then it has 1 MOA hashes all the way down. So I should not even need to dial it. I mean, I'm pretty much only going to be shooting at 50 yards anyways. But once I get it dialed in there and I know my chrono, I should be able to figure out the 100-yard drop pretty easy. And if I put that chrono data in the calculator, I should be able to kind of figure out which hash mark I need to hold on for most of my yardages that I'd ever take a shot with a 22 long rifle. So it's kind of a cool hybrid setup. It's not very expensive. I think the map on it's like $199, I want to say.
Yeah, $199. Yeah, and it's made in the USA, so that's pretty good for a USA-made scope.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. They also make a 2 to 7 in it, which would be even better if you're making like a true just walking around hunting gun or like a possum gun. That'd be perfect for your possum barn blazer.
I need a ACOG with the full kit. I need everything.
Yeah, well, you'd be able to see it better. I'll give you that. And the optical clarity really matters. Like for your nighttime shooting, if you're lighting it up with an Olight Warrior, you want the best quality glass because it makes a difference looking down in the dark. How much light is going to make it back to your eye. So I just put those. I actually like that scope so much that I bought 2 of them, and I bought that one for my carbon fibered Volquartsen 1022 setup that I have because I wanted a lightweight gun. I thought a red dot would be fine on it, and it's fine, but it's a red dot on a Volquartsen gun is such a waste of the accuracy potential of the Volquartsen that I was like, I need a lightweight scope. So I put the 3 to 9 on there. And then the next 2 are current scopes, but not really by choice. These are ones that are ready to be gone as soon as I can. Is it Mueller APV? This is a true Chinese import optic. This is like $140 for 4.5 to 14 scope. I've had this scope since before I moved to Idaho. So this scope is probably 12 or 15 years old. It was the best I could afford at the time, and it works completely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It has an adjustable objective for the different parallax settings, which is really nice for rimfire. And it's super cheap. It feels a little cheap. I think if I liked the gun that it's on and I shot it way more, I'd just buy another VX Freedom for that gun as well. But it's still there. It still works fine. If you need a budget rifle scope that you can't afford the Leupold, this Mueller will work. I have it in silver because the gun was silver and it's a 90s build. So that's what all the fancy guns were completely silvered out back then. But so I have that. I will be replacing that one at some point. And then the last one is, I'm even kind of embarrassed to admit this. It's a UTG Bug Buster 3 to 9 scope. And how much is it on Amazon? I think it's like $70, maybe something like that.
Well, the one you like, the one you linked to, the first bullet point says, "Beware of counterfeit products shipped directly from China."
Well, that's the pot calling the kettle black, isn't it?
Right.
Jeez. Okay. Well, so UTG, if everybody knows, is typically a very low quality Chinese import stuff. Now they do. The Hyundai analogy applies to UTG as well. A lot of their stuff that they're making these days, and they make a US made product too, is actually pretty good. But they still have that stigma of the UTG name on them. The reason I bought this scope, it's a 3 to 9 power scope, but look how short it is. It is ridiculously compact. It's very, very small. I think the objective size is, 32 millimeter. It's very small, very, very small scope. It looks right on a lot of different guns that a bigger scope just looks out of place on. It works fine. It actually has a mil-dot reticle in it, which I don't know if I would ever trust, but it does have it. It includes QD rings with it. It includes the flip-up covers. It has a red and a green reticle. This is like the bare bones I would ever really suggest, I think, and I don't really like it. I use it when I need it kind of thing. I actually bought it for those Ruger Charger builds that I was doing, and on a 4.5-inch barreled gun, any scope looks kind of ridiculously big. But these little compact, tiny bug busters, it didn't look that bad. So I keep them in a drawer, ready to use if I need them, but I don't use them day to day. And then what do you have? You just showed me one you had. You have a 3-9 as well.
Yeah, that's like an old Walmart Nikon special that I threw on a 1022, but I've had it on there for years and years, and it stayed zeroed, and I don't know, it's a good low, scope for a 1022.
I mean, you're proving the point. You sighted it in. You bought what you needed for that. You didn't need that 1022. You're not going to be dialing it in. You're not going to be holding over or using a ballistic reticle or anything like that. It's doing what it needed to do for the application you had for it, and that is completely fine.
Yeah. I mean, in the optic market, we're kind of in the best and worst days of it. The best because there's just so many optics out there that are, I don't know, like good enough for like what 99% of people do. And back in the old days, the difference between U.S. made and Chinese made optics was the clarity of the glass. You'd look through, an old Chinese optic and it'd be obvious that it was a piece of junk because it would be cloudy and it would just be awful. But like all the optics now, even the cheap ones like the UTGs, they all have good glass. So that's no longer a measuring stick for, exactly what you're getting. It's more of the build quality or the features and benefits, man, and stuff like that. And the warranty, right. But I mean, all the cheap old Chinese ones usually have a lifetime warranty too. So I mean, so
I think there's a Tommy Boy reference in here somewhere. I don't know. Yeah, I think for the bulk of people, they don't need a lot. But I wish people. I don't know if you've been to a gun show recently, but I wish people would not buy the cheap crap on gun show tables, like these just horrible. Like these super fancy looking, like lasers built in and all this stuff. And it's like $40. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Come on. What do you think you're getting here? Like, do you honestly think that's going to do what you think it's going to do? Like, if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Right.
Well, so that's my current. I do have a couple scopes that I really, 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 really want. And I will get them eventually. I just can't really justify them. Like you say, your Dream AR went on sale, but you had to let it go. I kind of did the same thing here. There's two optics. I need to put links to the show notes for these, but one is the Voodoo by EOTech. So EOTech came out with this rifle scope line a few years ago, and after EOTech Gate, I didn't really think much of it. But the Voodoo 5-25 scope is amazing. It is a very, very short scope. It's insanely short. I don't know how they got all the lenses to work in this thing, but I've only played with it at SHOT Show. I've never shot it. It was very impressive on a rifle that I played with, and I've heard quite a few people talking about them, and they all seem favorable. What I don't like about it is when you look at the website and all that, a lot of the specs on it are kind of hidden. Like you don't see what the true weight end is in it, and there's some stuff that there's not a lot of information about it, which is kind of annoying. But it's an insanely short scope, and it looks right on ARs. It looks right on a lot of rifles, and it's expensive, but it's not super high top end shelf. It's higher than a lot of people will go for. You find it
$2,200 for 5-25.
Yeah, so that's a lot, and don't get me wrong, that's a lot. But I don't know what else can compete with it in the length department. Doesn't it look ridiculously short?
It does. It says it's 11.2 inches length.
Yeah, it's really short. It has good turrets on it. Has a good reticle in it. It's compact. It's not terribly heavy, and it's not terribly expensive. I mean, it is expensive. Don't get me wrong. $2,500. It's a lot of money, no matter what, however you slice it. But that's one on a future gun I'd like to do. And then the other one that I really, really want to try is the loopholed Mark 6 and the Mark 5s that are I think it's the 3.8 to 18. They're very compact. Same thing. Compact, pretty good zoom range. Big tube. I think those are the 34 millimeter tubes. Good turrets, good reticle, and they're right up there in the same about a price. So those are the two I'm looking for. Yeah, anybody can make a full size scope that's good quality. I mean, the Diamond Pack Tactical is perfect for a lot of people, but I'm looking now for more specialized, more compact. ARs. I hate when you put a scope on an AR and the end of the scope is like almost touching the gas block. It just looks wrong. So I think that's where the compact scopes come in, and that's my next big hill to climb. But it might be next year.
It's the same length as the Bug Buster scope.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And that thing is small, so it's pretty insane. So that's my goals. Do you have any optics planned for your future? Well, first you need a rifle, so you need to own a gun, not a Call of Duty gun.
But that's the easy way to own them and shoot them.
I told Jake that we need to start an optics company that is the name of the optics in Call of Duty. I think it's Cronus, something like that. We'll probably be sued within a minute of being on the market, but
no, we could sell 1 billion first.
I'm sure they have that trademark locked down.
All the airsofters would buy it. Yeah,
that's the target demo.
I mean, I can find us a factory. Let's get going.
I'm sure you could. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so I hope that isn't boring. I hope I made that at least somewhat digestible. Scopes are a big topic, and I think they're very hard to buy, especially online. And a lot of stores do not carry all these high-end scopes. So you're really basing a lot on people's online recommendations.
Patriot Patch Company helps make this episode possible. Check out patriotpatch.co, Patch of the Month Club. Awesome Christmas designs, new Christmas ornament, PVC ornaments coming soon. patriotpatch.co. And if you're looking for awesome artwork or website design, check out hunterofdesign.com. Ryan Cross over at Hunter of Design. He also does all the awesome Patriot Patch Code designs, but if you need some of your own design work done, check out hunterofdesign.com. And Zach, where can people connect with you online?
Just YouTube and Instagram and Range Hot. I've been trying to write more and more for Range Hot because I think videos are fine, but I think still the printed word is pretty nice with the pictures that you can always reference and see at your own pace. So I put some articles up on Range Hot recently, so take a look at those. But if you want that design work, I would get it before Ryan's wife has his child, because he will be probably busy pretty soon.
Oh, he can multitask.
Oh, I'm sure.
He's got a laptop.
Okay.
So Zach's got a ton of links on the show notes to everything he's talked about. Check it out at firearmsradio.tv. Don't forget to reach out to us and complain about what we're doing to gunguyradio@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out all the other awesome shows here on the Firearms Radio Network. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv.